We're headed to the live line for the president of Defending Education. We've taken off the P at the beginning of that. Nicole Neily joining me now. It was just too big for the PDE. It just had to go DE, didn't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because universities count too, and some of them are adults, so it can't just be parents. We have to watch out for everybody. So
Everybody.
yeah,
Yep.
DEI is very. I just think I don't get offended very easily, Nikki. I really don't. You could like pass gas in my presence, it wouldn't bother me. But I'm literally offended by DEI.
Well, it's because it's such a dehumanizing philosophy, I think, is that it removes your individuality and it just says the most important thing about you is that you're part of a group, which you may or may not have had anything to do with, right? I mean, you couldn't choose your sex, you couldn't choose your ethnicity when you were born, but now you're going to be treated accordingly as a result of that, which is just something that is just kind of mind-boggling and awful to a lot of people for good reason.
Yeah, and people who have white skin, blue eyes, or blonde hair are the devil, no matter whether they're perfect Christians who treat everybody perfectly or not, according to DEI policy.
Right, and then it also implies that with the acronym of du jour, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, Persons of Color, are victims, right? That they are somehow less than, that they are have been so mistreated that they're unable to dig themselves out of this hole no matter how much, and that's why the government has to put their thumb on the scale. And I think, how dare you? It's funny, I was in Chicago over the weekend for some family funeral stuff, and I was looking and talking to my relatives about how my family, when they got out of the internment camps in California in in like the early 40s, they had nothing. They had a suitcase, and they lifted themselves up. They worked hard. My grandfather had multiple jobs, but he earned it. He didn't expect a handout or victimhood or pity because of having gone through this horrible situation. In fact, they were there were years where they were still treated very badly in Chicago. My grandfather's buried in a Japanese-only cemetery because there were many cemeteries that wouldn't take them. But they didn't feel bad for themselves. They persevered and they got on with it. You
know what the key word you said that just like it was almost like you shouted it, even though you just said it was expected.
Mm-hmm.
That's the expectation part that drives me crazy. Now we used to have affirmative action where it was basically focused on black folks trying to get into colleges and get an equal footing and whatever. And in the 60s and 70s, I think they might have needed it. You know what I mean? I think that there was a place and time for it, but that's not anymore. It's 2025, and I see successful people of every color walking around doing their thing. If you put in any kind of effort, you can be what you want to be. That's all there is to it. It's that simple. And if you make bad choices along the way and you fall down the steps, well, then you start over. You grab your pants, you pull them up, put on your boots, and you do it again. But this DEI thing, where they have entire departments that are recruiting people who don't deserve to take positions away from other deserving people, is absolutely discrimination no matter how you look at it.
Yes, and we're seeing in all aspects of society, doling out benefits, be it money, be it, think back even to the beginning of COVID, there was the whole idea of prioritizing vaccines for minorities. Just the fact that was so normalized for so long is a little bit insane. And so we're obviously in a course correction period right now, but there is so much work to be done, not only at the federal level, obviously, but also at the state level. And so I think that's something that people are forgetting about all this.
Yeah. So since you are defending education and looking at the universities, they are supposed to be getting rid of their DEI departments as per the president. Some of them are being sneaky and changing the names or just the ways that they go about creating DEI initiatives and things like that. But the donations that were going to them are astronomically huge.
Yes. My coworkers just went through and looked at, because there was, as you said, there's all these different programs, right? It's not just the DEI department at, let's say, University of Michigan or something. It's all the other programming that goes along with this. And so we have been tracking, as you said, both the programs that are going underground, right? The DEI department is now the belonging department. But it's also been all of these scholarships and funds. I feel like every time I turn around, my university, my alma mater is hitting me up for more money, right? Which is, funny because you think about the cost of tuition nowadays. What the heck else do you need more money for? But these funds, in the wake of George Floyd in particular, a lot of universities ran special fundraising drives to create funds to help, to further DEI programs, be it travel for faculty or things like that, and then giving the money out based on either adherence to the political ideology or just immutable characteristics, period, which is a grotesque.
Yeah, and to the tune of $336+ million. I mean, this is a giant amount of money, and it drives me crazy because I keep hearing Social Security and Medicare are going to be insolvent and there's nothing we can do about it. Yet we're handing it out like candy to people who aren't supposed to be here, and we're handing it out to universities who charge astronomical amounts for tuition and could get donations from their alma mater, or alumna, I should say. And all of this stuff does not make sense to me. The math does not math. And you think about, as much as all of these universities have spent, decades building these departments and programs and edifices, and, screaming their commitment to equity from the rooftops, how many full ride scholarships could have gone to needy and underprivileged students to actually get more diverse perspectives, experience, thought into classrooms? That's not what they wanted at all, right? This was, in many cases, either a box-checking exercise or really just a cynical political ploy. Because, I think they're looking for a certain kind of, worldview at that point. And so that's why we've seen universities doing the hiring statements, talk about your commitment to diversity. What have you done to further diversity? You know exactly what they're looking for. And it's a way to screen out conservatives and people who think, you know what, I don't want to be treated as the color of my skin. I'm more than that. Yeah. Well, I would hope that people feel like they're more than that, because I have friends that are pretty much the entire, I guess, gamut of the rainbow, for lack of a better word, because I don't want to name off every race on the planet. But I even have one friend from Alaska who's an actual Eskimo. So, I mean, I don't care what color you are as long as you're a good person. But if you're going to be doing my brain surgery, or if you're going to be the person sterilizing the equipment that's going to be used to do my brain surgery, not that I need it, I'm just saying, I want you to be the best one.
Absolutely, right. From med school all the way through to, I have a coworker right now who's working on looking at this in engineering schools. We had looked at this in teachers' colleges in the fall. I don't care if you're purple or green. I want you to be really good. Aerospace engineer, I want you to be super good. I don't want my plane to fall out of the sky.
Right.
To admit somebody, because, I think it kind of is implying, you know what, if it weren't for this help, you wouldn't get in. And what kind of, that's so condescending and paternalistic in and of itself. It's really appalling.
Well, I think it should be embarrassing, to be honest with you. But you know what? People love a handout right now. We have created a generation of champagne taste, beer budget people. It's horrible. But you said that universities, you're finding, are creating some sort of funds to funnel money towards DEI scholarships. They're calling them something else?
Yeah, no, they're internal funds. And so, we looked at about 125 schools across the country. And so these are usually through like the Giving Day campaigns, like where they'll try and, but you can select sort of what you want your money to go to. Do I want it to go to the study abroad fund? Do I want it to go to the general fund where they can kind of dole it out? But a lot of universities, in particular in the wake of George Floyd, did things like University of Nebraska had a community and belonging support fund. Louisiana State University had a diversity, equity, and media grant. And so just things like that where they were really starting to throw those buzzwords in. And then when that money would be put into a specific pot, then it would be doled out for, equity or other DEI type purposes. So, it's money that people are donating to the university, but that's not being able to be used by everybody.
What bothers me is this George Floyd Memorial Scholarship. I get that his death was at the hands of, in my opinion, a bad cop. I think it was a bad situation. Had he complied, it could have gone a completely different way. But the guy tried for 10 minutes to get him to listen. He just wouldn't listen. He was not a good guy. But we have made him some sort of angelic, statuesque figure who was not a good citizen, didn't deserve to die. I'm not saying he did. But we have a memorial scholarship in his name? Seriously?
Right. Yeah, and so it's just, I think it was, we have heard the term like weaponizing kindness, weaponizing empathy, right? Like in the wake of that, I think a lot of people thought, oh no, I feel so bad, I should do something, right? And giving money is a way to do it. But again, I look at a lot of these university administrators who have PhDs or advanced degrees. They have been marinating kind of this DEI and critical race theory stuff for a really long time. And they kind of, I think, in many cases view themselves as, social justice avenging, angels of death, where they have to go in, and it really is incumbent on them to hold certain people back to push other groups forward. I mean, let's think about Ibram Kendi's quote, that, the solution to past discrimination is present discrimination. He's saying, disadvantage, hold back some people so that we can push our BIPOC friends forward. And I think that's wrong, right? We want people to be advanced and celebrated and promoted, et cetera, on the basis of hard work and talent, not on the basis of, accidents of birth.
Yeah. Well, we could go one further and just hire people based on, opinion and innuendo and gossip. Why don't we start doing that? It seems to be about as legit as what these guys are doing. But Trump has done a lot to dismantle DEI programs, and it's really hard to know what's happening when you can't just erase the whole thing, because they rebrand it. They're sneaky, and that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of two things going on. I think there are some administrators who are grateful that this is happening, and they can point to President Trump as sort of the boogeyman, and they could say, we have to get rid of the DEI program, when I think for many administrators it's a relief. They didn't want the stuff to start with. They know that things have gotten out of control. But it's been hard to, voice that internally when you have crazy faculty senates that, are bought in and all this stuff. But I think there's a non-zero percentage of administrators that are like, okay, we got to get rid of it. Whoops. But I think a larger percentage are the schools, as you said, that are trying to memory hold it, trying to make things go underground. I was at a board governance conference a few weeks ago, and speakers were saying, you have to hide in plain sight. I think that, the mindset is basically, we'll just wait this administration out, and we'll start, keep doing what you're doing. They said it takes a long time to lose federal funding under Title VI, so continue your inclusivity work. And we have now started to see a lot of these universities band together. There was an article, a Big Ten defense treaty, where the schools have basically pledged mutual aid if one of them is under assault. The Ivies are holding closed-door meetings among their presidents to try and figure out how to resist the president's initiatives. It's kind of crazy where we're at right now. This is the hill that many of them want to die on. And personally, I would not mess around with Pam Bondi, someone who looks that good when she's 62, right? I mean, there's a little bit of witchcraft going on. Yeah. But I would not mess around with her or Secretary McMahon. But if that's the fight they want, I think that's the fight they're going to get.
Well, and let's hope that it continues to happen, because I don't think after Trump that there's going to be a switch back to Democrats, because their little kumbaya, let's cuss and scream and talk about communism is going to work, because you've only got one generation that's buying their bull crap, and then the next generation is coming up hot, conservatively hot, and it's going to happen that way. But I do want to give a shout out to the schools who have never done this in the first place. They're the ones sitting by saying, you know what, all that money would be nice, but we're just not going to buy into a program like that. So shout out to them. And if that's where your kid's at, like Hillsdale and stuff like that, that's great. So where do people go to read the article? I know there's one in the Daily Caller, but where do they go to learn more about defending education and the things you're working on to stop DEI?
Yeah, our website is still the same. It's defendinged.org. We're also on all the normal social media channels, but we have this report on the DEI funds and scholarships. We have other reports looking at, just basically the screenshots, the before and after of these different schools renaming their programs. And we are continuing to investigate. So if anybody has any ideas of universities to dig into or K-12 districts, let us know. We are always all ears.